In the early 2000s, a completely new voice appeared in hip-hop. The sound was different. It mixed raw street rap with smooth, African-inspired melodies and emotional storytelling. Within a few short years, that single voice would absolutely dominate radio stations, club speakers, and Billboard charts across the entire world. The artist was Akon, but what millions of fans didn't know was that before the fame, before the platinum records, and before the sold-out stadium concerts, Akon had a past that sounded more like a Hollywood crime movie than a standard music career. Because before becoming a global pop superstar, Akon told the world he was a hardened criminal. He claimed he spent years in a notorious prison running an international car theft ring. He built an entire musical empire on the story of a convict who turned his life around. But years later, an investigative report would uncover a massive, shocking industry secret. Akon didn't survive a grueling multi-year prison sentence. In fact, his criminal mastermind backstory was almost entirely an illusion. And yet, that carefully crafted illusion became the greatest marketing trick in hip-hop history. It opened the door for a prep school-educated musical genius to trick the industry, infiltrate the mainstream, and eventually build a billion-dollar empire that would change the continent of Africa. To understand how Akon pulled off this masterclass in branding, you have to go back to the beginning. Akon was born Elian Fayum. His family had incredibly strong, deeply rooted musical ties. His father, Mor Thayum, was a legendary, world-renowned jazz percussionist from Senegal. From the moment he was born, Akon was surrounded by the mechanics of elite music, but his childhood was very different from most future pop stars, and very different from the street image he would later portray. Akon spent his early youth traveling between the United States and Senegal. This gave him a unique, global perspective on culture, rhythm, and life. Eventually, his family settled in New Jersey. He attended high school, learned to play multiple instruments, and possessed a natural, undeniable gift for melody. But in the late 1990s and early 2000s, pure musical talent wasn't always enough to break into the hip-hop industry. The rap game at that time was dominated by gritty, hyper-realistic street narratives. Artists like 50 Cent were taking over the world by sharing their authentic, dangerous backgrounds. Record labels weren't looking for prep school musicians. They were looking for street cred. Akon was a genius. He knew exactly what the industry wanted to buy, and he knew exactly how to package it. During his late teens and early 20s, Akon did get involved with the wrong crowd. He was briefly connected to a stolen car situation. He was arrested, and he did spend a few short months in a county jail waiting for his hearing before the charges were ultimately dropped. For a normal person, a few months in a local jail is a wake-up call. For Akon, it was the perfect origin story. He took that tiny seed of truth, a brief stint in a county jail, and watered it until it grew into a mindless, cinematic universe. He adopted the persona of a hardened convict. He named his newly formed record label Convict Music, and in a stroke of absolute branding genius, he added a distinct sound effect to the beginning of every single song he produced: the heavy, metallic clank of a prison cell door slamming shut. That sound became a Pavlovian trigger for a whole generation of music fans. When you heard the jail cell slam, you knew a hit song was about to play. After being released from his brief jail stint, Akon hit the studio. He blended his emotional, melodic singing voice with Raw Street Lyrics. In 2004, he released the song that would change everything, Locked Up. The song told a dark, powerful story about life behind bars, police harassment, and the desperation of the prison system. Because of Akon's incredible vocal delivery, it felt incredibly authentic. Listeners connected with it immediately. The streets loved it. The radio loved it. Locked Up became a massive international hit, and the myth of Akon the convict was officially sold to the world. But that was only the beginning. Now that his foot was in the door, Akon didn't have to just make prison songs. He could unleash his actual pop music genius. Soon after, he released an avalanche of tracks that completely paralyzed the Billboard charts. He dropped Lonely, a high-pitched, emotional ballad that proved he could do pop music just as well as street rap. Then came the mega hits. Smack That, featuring Eminem, exploded internationally. Radio stations played it every single hour. Music channels kept the video on an endless loop. He followed it up with I Wanna Love You, featuring Snoop Dogg and Don't Matter. Akon was no longer just a new artist. He was the ultimate cheat code in the music industry. If a rapper wanted a guaranteed #1 hit, they didn't write a chorus. They just paid Akon to sing it. In the mid-2000s, Akon was featured on over 300 guest appearances and secured dozens of Billboard Hot 100 hits. But while the world was dancing to his hooks, Akon was operating on a completely different level behind the scenes. He knew that the life of a pop star is short. Tastes change. Audiences move on. He didn't just want to be an artist. He wanted to be an executive. Using the massive profits from his solo career, he aggressively expanded Convict music. He started hunting for unique talent that the major labels were ignoring. His first major discovery was a young, eccentric singer from Florida who loved using an obscure vocal effect called auto-tune. The industry thought it was a gimmick. Akon thought it was the future. He signed him immediately. That artist was T-Pain. T-Pain would go on to reshape the entire sound of the 2000s, generating millions for Akon's label. But Akon's greatest business move was yet to come. In 2007, a young theatrical pop singer had just been dropped by her record label, Def Jam. The executives didn't understand her bizarre outfits, her electronic sound, or her wild theatrical vision. They thought she was a failure. Akon heard her music. He immediately recognized a once-in-a-generation superstar. He stepped in, negotiated a joint deal, and signed her to his own Con Live distribution label. That artist was Lady Gaga. When Lady Gaga exploded into a global phenomenon with hits like Just Dance and Poker Face, Akon wasn't just cheering her on. He was quietly collecting a massive percentage of the profits. Akon later admitted in interviews that Lady Gaga single-handedly sustained him financially when his own solo music career began to slow down. He had essentially retired from making his own music, living comfortably off the massive empire he had built, identifying other people's talent. By 2008, when investigative journalists finally published court documents proving Akon had never actually served a long prison sentence, it didn't even matter that the public didn't care. He was already a beloved superstar. He had already won the game. He had used a fabricated backstory to sneak into the music industry, and once he was inside, he proved he was actually one of the smartest executives in the building. But as the 2010s rolled around, Akon's vision expanded far beyond the entertainment industry. He looked at his immense wealth, his global influence, and his African roots, and decided he wanted to do something that actually mattered. He shifted his focus from music to massive global development. In 2014, he launched Akon Lighting Africa. The project was incredibly ambitious. The goal was to bring clean, renewable solar electricity to communities across rural Africa that had never had reliable power. While other celebrities were buying sports cars and mansions, Akon was negotiating with foreign governments and setting up solar panels. The project was a staggering success. Akon Lighting Africa provided electricity, street lamps, and solar power to millions of people across more than a dozen African countries. For Akon, it wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a deeply personal mission. He had seen the reality of energy poverty during his childhood in Senegal, and he was using his pop star fortune to fix it. But perhaps his most shocking and controversial project was announced a few years later. Akon secured land from the Senegalese government and announced plans to build a $6 billion futuristic smart city. The project, officially named Akon City, was pitched as a real-life Wakanda. The vision included state-of-the-art hospitals, modern infrastructure, a crypto-based economy utilizing his own currency called Akon, and sustainable energy. While the ambitious project has faced numerous delays, debates, and skepticism from urban planners, the sheer scale of the vision shows exactly how far Akon Thiam has come. He had gone from a kid in New Jersey faking a prison record for street cred, to a chart-topping global icon, to an executive who discovered Lady Gaga, to a philanthropist literally trying to build cities from the ground up. Very few human beings in history have navigated a path that's strange, complex, and brilliant. The story of Akon is the ultimate lesson in playing the hand you are dealt, and then buying the entire casino. He didn't let the music industry's narrow expectations stop him. He gave them exactly what they wanted, built a fortune on the back of a catchy jail cell sound effect, and then used that fortune to literally bring light to millions of people in the dark. Today, Akon's journey remains one of the most fascinating and misunderstood stories in pop culture, because he didn't actually turn a prison sentence into a global empire. Turned the idea of a prison sentence into a global empire. And in doing so, he became one of the greatest masterminds hip-hop has ever seen.